Hello, I'm here with part 7 of a 10-part series taking a look at the Comics Journal's top 100 comics of the 20th century as determined by a selection of critics and editors for that publication in 1999. Issue 210 of the Comics Journal. There's the original cover by Seth. This right here is Canon, made by myself and Alex Eklund. This entire fat issue is devoted to that one issue of the Comics Journal, and in fact, not even that whole issue, but just the part concerning the list. Interviews with all the surviving list makers, and just tons of analysis of the books on the list, and more information than anyone anywhere could possibly want. If you're interested, canonzine.bigcartel.com. I'll put a link in the description. But otherwise, I will get to part 7. We're looking at 40 through 31. First up, at number 40, The Kinder Kids by Lionel Finninger. Or Feininger, I'm not sure, but I'll say Finninger. This very slim volume, published by Kitchen Sink. When did that appear? 1994. This represents all of Finninger's comic work. He went on to become a fine artist of note and just made comics for, really a couple of years. And this is the Kinder Kids. It's bigger than the screen here, so I apologize. But yeah, great image right there. And really inventive cartooning. These are from 1905, 1906, in that range. So very early on. In recent years, thanks to Sunday Press, we've been able to see some of these early strips printed in their full glory. We get to see how sort of advanced they were, how great the coloring was. Can you imagine opening up your Sunday paper and seeing something like this? Just at full size. This isn't even full size. Just incredible work with strips like this and Little Nemo. But Finninger was clearly a guy who was thinking about the form. And anyway, these are great. I highly recommend this book if you're able to find it anywhere. This stuff's been reprinted a few times, but obviously it's not the sort of thing there's going to be a huge demand for. But worth checking out. He came and went quick, but he left his mark. Number 39. The editorial cartoons of Pat Oliphant, who was an Australian who came to America and became the leading editorial cartoonist in this country. I guess if you're watching in another country, it's not this country, but my country, the United States of America. I picked a random collection here, lots of Reagan stuff from the 80s. Oliphant had this little character down here in the corner who would sort of comment on things. I'm sure you've seen that in many other cartoons. I'm not sure I don't think he's the guy who made that up, but he was dominant enough that that's who I associate it with. As you can see, he has almost kind of a throwback style. Some of this stuff, this is like reminiscent of a Winsor McKay, when his editorial cartooning, but then it's paired with this 80s caricature of Reagan that really looks of its time. But like I said, I was a kid in the 80s when I started reading the paper. Probably would have been in the early 90s, to be honest. But yeah, this style was the dominant mode of American editorial cartooning. It might still be, I'm not sure. It's a dying art form, that's for sure. But Pat Oliphant, there you go. Number 38, The Autobiographical Stories in Yummy Fur by Chester Brown. This is the Playboy. There's, I believe, 3 collections of autobio stories from Yummy Fur. Maybe The Little Man and I Never Liked You are the other 2. And the Playboy, which is probably his most famous story of this type. Though probably not Chester Brown's most famous story at this point. But there was a time when his autobio was considered his most important work. Great stuff. I love this period of Chester Brown. And, you know, this is something I believe I remark on in the issue of Canon, but people forget how important Chester Brown was. I mean, he was so highly regarded in alternative comics, and his star seems to have faded a bit as other people have risen and tastes have changed. But there was a point he was considered right up there with the Hernandez brothers. And when you read those old Yummy Furs, it's no wonder why. Very good stuff. I love the stuff. Number 37, Dunesbury by Gary Trudeau. Speaking of things that are of its time, Dunesbury. I don't know if younger readers, when you look at just the wall of this stuff, the sameness just really jumps out at you. I wonder if younger people look at this stuff at all. So much of it is involved in the politics and the current events of its day that I can't imagine that a lot of it even makes sense. At the same time, there are a lot of characters and a lot of personal lives going on, and relationships and families, and that must translate a bit. And when it's really humming, a very, very funny strip, and amazingly consistent. This is all work from the 70s. Trudeau's art really pushes forward into the 80s, and he has this almost clear line style that I think is really beautiful. I like that stuff a lot. I believe... I shouldn't say that. I was going to say, I wonder if he won a Pulitzer Prize for cartooning. I'm not sure if he did. But this was a massive, massive strip in its day. Still going. I believe it's just on Sundays now, but incredibly still going. This is one I don't know. I don't even know if it would make a top 100 list now. In 1999, it did not seem out of place, and it didn't really seem or ranked too highly. Number 36, Calvin and Hobbs. This is more of an evergreen strip for a lot of people. I was obsessed with Calvin Hobbs when I was a kid. All right. Yeah, there's prototype art for Calvin Hobbs. Obviously, he didn't end up looking like that. Anyway, I was obsessed with this strip when I was a kid. I had the collections. I read them over and over and over again, and I certainly wasn't alone in that. Really fantastic work. And Watterson's remained a mystery since he refuses to give interviews and hasn't been seen on video. Not much to say. You can read this whole strip. It's been collected and remained in print. I believe it's being reprinted again in sort of soft cover sets right now. Fantastic cartooning. This is one where I think people's nostalgia mixes up and leads them to maybe overrate it a little bit. And I say that as someone who loves the strip, but to me, it's not a top 10 strip, and there's a lot of people out there who would have it in their top 10. And more power to them. That's great. Number 35, the SpiderMan Comics of Steve Ditko and Stan Lee. They did this for, I believe, 38 issues and maybe an annual or two. Now, this is the wrong collection. barely got any Ditko in it. So, give me 1 second. Alright, no offense to John Romita, but he's not on the list. So, Ditko. Getting to the real shit here. 1 through 38, annuals 1 and 2. And then it has material from a couple other things here. But we're really only interested in the Spider-Man stuff by especially Ditko. Lee slapping his name on everything. But what's made these comics stand the test of time is the strangeness of Ditko, in my opinion. Really, really great stuff. Still very readable, enjoyable. I mean, Jesus, look how wordy some of these pages are. Stan Lee just loving the sound of his own voice. But when they really got into it, just lots of fun action. Incredible how many characters Ditko was creating at this time. It's just one after the other of great villains. Here's the Green Goblin. Wildly overused in later years, but not Ditko's fault. He did great Green Goblin stories. Here's the Sinister Six. He had so many good villains, they can make a team of them. And they were just all fantastic. Yeah, I love this stuff. I think these definitely deserve to be on the list, and they're some of the best superhero comics ever made. And I might love his Doctor Strange more. Actually, yeah, that's probably what I would choose to go on the list if I was only able to choose one. But certainly understandable why this is on there. God, it's a great panel. Love that. But anyway, great stuff. I can't imagine there's people out there who haven't read at least Amazing Spider-Man 15. But maybe you haven't read all of this stuff, and you should. It's great. Number 34, The Theatrical Caricatures of Al Hirschfeld. This is one of the entries on the list that really pushes the definition of what comics are. There's a few of them on the list that do this, but this one I think might be pushing it the most, because these are essentially illustrations, and single illustrations at that. They're obviously cartooning, though, and wonderful cartooning. Hirschfeld was a wildly talented man, and drew celebrities and people from Broadway shows. Here's a whole bunch of TV personalities of 1954. But yeah, he chronicled Broadway for decades. And he worked for, I think 70 years or so doing this stuff. Amazing work. I love the work. But as I said, is it comics? I don't know. I try not to get too caught up in those definitions. But certainly from the cartooning tradition. Not sure how much Hirschfeld is available nowadays, but I feel like these older books, they're around, and I'm sure they can be had for not too much. Number 33, Chester Gould's Dick Tracy. This is from 1945 through 47, so he's in full force at this point, at the top of his game. We have any Sundays? Here's a nice big Sunday. Gould's another guy who was a singular, had a singular vision for sure. And, when I was a kid, I think it was Gladstone repackaged some old Chester Gould strips into a comic book format. There are 5 issues of that. And I bought those off the spinner rack. I was probably 12, no, maybe a little older. I was probably 14, because I think they came out with the movie. So yeah, 13, 14 years old. I loved that stuff. I just ate it up, and I didn't know anything about Dick Tracy as far as, being a classic strip or anything like that. I knew the cartoon, I knew the movie, and I knew the comic book version. But these are great. They're so much fun. Gould was definitely a nut, and he just created one amazing villain after another and put all these characters through their paces. But these comics read like nothing else. IDW, or the Library of American Comics imprint, published through IDW the complete run of the strip. Of course, you know, a bunch of them are out of print now and cost a fortune, and other ones are dirt cheap. If you come across any of the cheap ones, I'd pick them up. They've reprinted the first few books through Clover Press recently, putting them at this larger format. Yeah, it's good stuff. I highly recommend it. They're all just really enjoyable. He gets really weird at one point. I think at one point Dick Tracy goes to the moon. You can kind of tell when that time period is, of course, when everybody is going to the moon. But yeah, interesting character. Number 32, Jack Cole's Plastic Man. He first appeared in 1941, ran for several years. You can see Jack Cole, who would later go on to be a Playboy cartoonist. He had a newspaper strip, and you can really just see how clean and, you know, I don't want to use the word rubbery, but that's kind of what I'm thinking, is that it's so elastic. Just looks like great cartooning. Must have really stood out on the comic book racks as something different. This entire run is collected by DC over the course of 8 archives. As far as I know, this is the best way to read this material. I don't know if it's really available anywhere else. But this is lovely work, you know, presented very nicely. Yeah, a little high on the list, in my opinion, but still clearly inventive, amazing work. At number 31, Poison River by Gilbert Hernandez. This story was serialized in Love and Rockets, the first volume of Love and Rockets. Really, and then I believe highly edited and moved around for the collected version. And it's really a masterpiece, which isn't a word I try to use too often. It's great work. It's not my favorite of Gilbert Hernandez's work, because I'm a huge fan of Human Diastrophism, which will be coming up in a little bit in a future video. But this is an incredible book. The cartooning is just fantastic. I mean, just look, every page is packed to the gills. Beautiful. He's just laboring over these things. It's just fantastic work. I can only imagine what it was like to try to decipher this shit as it came out every month. But it also must have been a thrill as well. So, yeah, highly recommend. I mean, the first 50 issues of Love and Rockets, probably the single best run of a comic in this country ever, and maybe any country. It's just incredible shit. So any of it is hard to, you know, turn down or say it's lesser work. But this really is one of the best pieces of that first 50 issues. And with that, I'm done with this section. Only 2 more of these videos to go. Is that right? No. 3 more of these videos to go. So, once again, I cover this list in Canon. canonzine.bigcartel.com. We go over everything. We include at least 1 image from every single entry on the list. And interviews and articles and discussion galore. If you've been thinking that this is what you've been missing, and I can't imagine that's the case, but here it is. All right, I'll be back for part 8. soon. Thank you.